Into Purple Daily. Matthew Coller here. Courtney Cronin as well. Jonathan Harrison is producing. And right off of the top of the show, we have a person on the internet, among many, tweeting about the possibility of Stefon Diggs being traded. Now, I do not want to call this a trade rumor or say that it's coming from some sort of legitimate source like Adam Schefter or Ian Rappaport or anything like that. But let me ask you this to start the show, Courtney. If we found out this week that Stefon Diggs went to the Vikings brass and said, I have just had enough of this and I can't do another year with this quarterback and with the same story. I'm one of the best wide receivers in the league and I want to show it somewhere else. Give me a 1 to 10 how much that would surprise you.
Does 10 mean I'm more surprised?
Yes, 10 means that you are totally stunned.
Okay.
And 1 would be like if you found out that Michael Floyd was lying about kombucha.
Put it at a 1.5.
Really? Okay.
I wouldn't be surprised at all.
So that puts it in the category of like very possible that he would do that.
See, that's where I'm cautious on that because we haven't heard anything yet. Stuff I've checked in on internally, nothing's popped back that, hey, this is legit. Because we've been hearing trade rumors since, what was it?
OTAs, when the Instagram picture came out of him wearing another uniform.
Yeah, it was St. Patrick's Day.
That was sent out. So that would be what, March?
Yeah,
sent out by his brother.
I think it's either Marshawn or Trayvon Diggs sent out a picture of Stefon Diggs in the Redskins uniform. And Adam Schefter, within a few minutes, had confirmed that it was totally bleeping false or whatever his Viking source inside the building had said about just seeing that and saying it was just unequivocally false. But we fast forward to the month of October, where we're at now going into week 5 and seeing how this season has transpired for Stefon Diggs. And when you think about it, with the trade deadline coming up, with the season at a really critical point right now, I mean, I don't think there's anything more must win than this game against the Giants. And we could continue saying that probably every week for this offense because there's just no solid foundation to stand on saying, hey, it's going to work out. It's going to be fine. There's a recipe for success because it feels like it's just so in limbo. And if I'm Stefon Diggs, if I'm 25 years old, I'm in the prime of my career, have yet to make a Pro Bowl, and I put up 1,000-yard season last year, and I'm trying to justify my contract, prove my contract so the Vikings can't come to me and ask me to take a pay cut or anything like that in the years down the line. I'm going to want to if things play out here, I'm not going to want to be here. So that's why I think all the dots line up to all the speculation. One thing I think as a media member you look at here when it comes to Stefon Diggs and Adam Thielen is we're kind of back to where we were last year. I think I've used this term on this show before. It was very much a read between the lines type season.
Well, certainly was.
With John DeFilippo, Kirk Cousins, Mike Zimmer, what they say, taking it at face value, and then diving into it, talking to people behind the scenes, reading through the comments. Adam Thielen's comments from Sunday needed to be said. Maybe they were a little harsh. I didn't think they were, but this is Minnesota. Adam is from Minnesota. He walked that back a little bit yesterday and tried to make it more in a broad sense. We know what you were getting at, Adam. It's fine. Go ahead and say it because it needed to be said. Stefon Diggs hasn't talked to the media since before the Oakland game. Now, some people are going to say, oh, that's a wide receiver being a diva. He's cranky. He's upset. I don't think he wants to say something that is going to get blown up into a headline and get even more speculation that he doesn't want to be here.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's somebody who wears his emotion on his sleeve.
As we saw Sunday.
In the game, towel over his head on the sideline, had to be kind of calmed down by Kyle Rudolph at one point because he clearly did not agree with the play call of running it on first down so late in the fourth quarter, which, same, Stefon, same.
Yeah. Feel you on that one.
But it's,
or check downs to Amir Abdullah.
Or CJ Ham. Anyways, I do believe that the rumors, that's what they are right now. They are rumors. And until we hear something further, I think that's all you can go off of. But it makes sense to bring up this point of somebody who was such a humongous part of this offense. He's the miracle man. He will be enshrined in Minnesota forever. But right now, he's frustrated. Right now, Adam Thielen is frustrated. I have a story coming out tomorrow. It's kind of like, what the heck happened to them in the first 4 games of the year this year? the pendulum swung so far in the other direction. Mike Zimmer didn't like what John DeFilippo was doing last year, even though the offense was performing out of its mind the first 4 weeks of the season, and really up until week 9 when Zimmer decided he wanted to get involved in that side, and there was a bucking of heads, and it led to the firing of John DeFilippo ahead of the week 15 game against Miami. But now as we look at it, like, they're obsolete in this offense. And I don't want to go as far to say like the offense, the game plan is not, like, they can't do anything in this offense, because certainly we saw a number of times on Sunday when they were wide open. There were play action throws that could have been made. There were, intermediate throws. Like, you don't necessarily need to go the deep shot, but you could have gotten your receivers and trust them to get away from the safety and trust them to do their jobs. You could have trusted them a little bit more, and Kirk had time to throw. But right now, it's coming to a head where eventually it's got to tip one direction or the other. And I just don't know, with the way that this offense looks right now, that it could get back on track as quickly as it might need to, if that makes any sense.
So I'm trying to write down right now all the things I can think of for reasons why Stefon Diggs wouldn't want to be here.
Okay.
And maybe you can either rank them. I'm not going to make you pie chart.
I could.
Do you want to? Do you dare? I can get you piece of paper.
Can I get a pen?
Yep, I can get you a pen and piece of paper. We could try to pie chart right now.
Oh,
if
Lord.
you want pie chart of reasons why Stefon Diggs might want to leave,
right,
which again, it's
only
only on social media that people are talking about it, but now it's kind of 2 weeks in a row where it's been talked about.
It needs to be addressed because of the era that we're in the NFL with Jalen Ramsey, which I remember I asked Stefon Diggs specifically about that right after Ramsey decided he wanted to take his destiny into his own hands. And he gave me a pretty basic answer, just about, like, at that point he claimed he hadn't heard about it, didn't know much about it, but just like guys being happy, and you want to be in a situation where you're appreciated and where you're used. I know that you and I predicted that if there's anybody that's going to be the guy that would want out, it's probably Stefon Diggs, and for a litany of reasons that you can't say are anything that are more legit. Okay, let me have them.
Okay,
I'm gonna write them down first.
Number 1 is DC. So he is from the DC area, and he's very close with his family. He lost his father early in his life, and I think that matters to him a lot. His brothers and his mom. Kirk Cousins would be reason number 2, because he does not throw the ball when Stefon Diggs is wide open. And imagine what Stefon Diggs' numbers would have looked like the other day. He still caught 7 passes for 102 or something. But if Cousins had thrown it the times he was open, and the same goes for that Packers game, he would be one of the NFL's best receivers right now.
One catch in that Packers game. You start some of that too. Like, I know there's a lot of truthers out there who still want to believe, and they say, oh, Diggs, he was targeted 7 times in that Packers game. One of them was thrown into quadruple coverage. Yes. The other one was thrown into double coverage in the end zone, which was a Hail Mary attempt, if you even want to call that. I'm not even going to I'm going to respect Hail Mary and not even call it that. But, people want to talk about the drops and things like that. Like, I can't get behind that. I think that it really is more one side than saying Diggs is the fault here.
And the one drop that he had was thrown way high. He usually brings it in, but I mean, it wasn't a good throw anyway. So, all right, Cousins not targeting him enough, or just being generally frustrating, because I think that, I'm going to get farther down here. Number 1 status is another one for your pie chart. I mean, we've talked about this before, that I think Diggs, when he looks at, he's a very smart guy, and when he looks at the numbers that are out there on the efficiency when you throw the ball to him, his contested catches, his route running success that everybody tracks because football, right? And he sees all that. He sees Matt Harmon does the reception perception thing where he tracks every route and the success rate for every route, and Diggs is always at the top. He sees his numbers against man coverage. He knows all this stuff, and he sees the tape. And he might believe, look, I want to get that recognition and the second contract, which he will be still pretty young when that comes up. I want to get that second contract that says outrageous money like the top receivers get, and you're not getting that with a handful of catches in these first 4 games. So number 1 status. Super Bowl. After the other day, anybody buying that the Vikings are a Super Bowl contender? I mean, if you can't go on the road and score more than 16, or you can't, do anything but throw an interception at the end of a game against Green Bay, it's pretty hard to buy into the Super Bowl status. And just the general offensive design based around Dalvin Cook, which I'm sure, no offense to Dalvin's talent, but just probably strikes Stefon Diggs as being not the most 2019 thing to ever be done in football. So give me percentages on which one you would think would influence Stefon Diggs the most if he did want out of Minnesota. And while you do that, I'm just going to talk for a second. So
So I can do
I'll
this
let
while
you
you're doing
focus.
this.
Yeah.
I'm not even getting to the break, so I don't even
No, you're not getting the
Oh,
break.
man.
You got to do it
I
on
gotta
the
work
fly.
fast.
This is how this works. When we used to do podcast versions of this, there was no break.
There's no break.
You just had to figure it out
I'm
right
a
on the
pro.
fly.
I'm a pro's
But
pro. I got this.
I just want to be on record saying it would be a terrible idea to trade away Stefon Diggs. You would be in much better shape going to him saying, what can we do for you to make this work offensively? How can we make sure that Kirk Cousins throws you the ball and makes this work? Because when Case Keenum was as good as he was, there's something that's been missing over the last 2 years with Case Keenum when he's been performing poorly in other places. Oh, it's Stefon Diggs and Adam Thielen. And of course, Pat Shurmur too. But two elite wide receivers are missing from Denver and Washington. Whereas here, he had those two guys to throw it up to and give them a chance. But I also wonder if there's a fundamental issue as well, or if all of this is entirely based on, and it's just how the NFL works sometimes, all of the people who are on Twitter and Reddit and all that talking about potential trades for Stefon Diggs are putting together the pieces that aren't actually there. Like, he is obviously frustrated. We saw him frustrated even in training camp at times with Kirk Cousins, but he is an emotional player. He always has been an emotional player. And it's possible that when they lose, he burns hot, but that he doesn't want any part of this. Now, it is sort of worth looking into when he doesn't talk for 2 weeks, and that's unusual behavior, but it might just be that he doesn't want to say anything that people could read into further.
Mm-hmm.
Are you done yet?
Yeah. I mean, it's not the greatest drawing, but the percentages add up. I checked.
Okay. What do you got?
Hold on. Talk amongst yourself.
I just was.
Okay.
Now we need this pie chart.
Okay.
It's
sorry. It's skewed. The design is skewed.
That's not important. The percentages are what's important. All right. Reasons that Stefon Diggs might be really upset with the way things are going for the Vikings. What do you think?
My number one is Kirk not targeting him enough. And a lot of that is not just what's gone on this season.
Mm-hmm.
Adam Thielen is the number one receiver in this offense.
Mm-hmm.
There is something to be said when you're watching back games and you're seeing the two of them lined up on opposite sides of the line of scrimmage, running similar or very, similar routes, same route depth, same route, whatever it is. That ball is going to Adam Thielen 9 times out of 10. There is something about that. It's the chemistry. It's Kirk's guys who he's comfortable with. So I think that and knowing the limitations of his quarterback. I mean, you saw from the stuff that I posted of the dots yesterday from Next Gen. I know that there's some people who want to criticize and say, oh, well, you don't know where the safety is. You don't know what corner he had outside leverage, blah, blah, blah.
I was sitting with an NFL quarterback who hit me in the arm when he saw that play and said, did you see how open Stefon Diggs was? So confirmed.
And it's confirmed. There are limitations here that I think both receivers are fully aware of. And that's got to be scary knowing, hey, I'm in my prime right now. And this quarterback cannot get me the ball. He's not playing at a level where we can both do our jobs at a high level. So I have that as 40%. That's my number one. Right behind that at 30%, so it adds up to 70. I have 30 then to work with, is the run first offense. This is an offense that Mike Zimmer wants because he wants his defense to get the credit and wants to win games with defense and have a conservative approach. That does not bode well for receivers in 2019. That is not going to benefit Adam Thielen and Stefon Diggs. I can't tell you how many fantasy questions I had come to me from January until, a day ago. But before really people realize that. So let's say January through August, people saying, hey, what's this new offense going to look like with Gary Kubiak and Kevin Stefanski? Are they still going to be able to get Diggs his? Are they still going to be able to get Thielen his? What we found out is no, they're not. So I think the run first mentality is kind of harmful if you're a receiver who is really, really good, more than just a third down or a possession guy. And Stefon Diggs is that. He's that and more. And I don't think that this formula, think about the receivers. Think about 2015, the year that they got to the NFC wildcard game. How did they win that season? Conservative approach. You're not having 2,000-yard receivers in that offense. You're having defense win you games.
But throwing it up when you needed to.
Throwing up when you needed to, but more times than not, a very conservative approach. I mean, yeah, Teddy was able to do that, I think, in ways that Diggs might.
But you're 100% right. 2015, nobody was putting up huge receiving numbers.
And I just don't think that the mentality that we have here, yes, Dalvin Cook is dynamic, and they all appreciate that, and they just want to win games, et cetera, et cetera. It's not going to bode well for Diggs. That's 30%. Behind that, I said number one status at 15%. He's a number one receiver. People I've talked to around the league,
oh, no question.
When you balance out Adam Thielen and Stefon Diggs and say, who would you pick if you have to pick them? Like, who would you go with? Like, who is your guy, regardless of stats and the way that things have played out this season? Who would you pick? And the answer most times is Stefon Diggs. He's a number one in any offense.
Yep, absolutely.
Most offenses.
Even if you consider it a lock, they're both number ones.
Yes, they are. But I think that you would go with Diggs more than anything if you had to choose between the two, right? So 15% there. I said Washington, D.C., 10%, which means that Super Bowl is 5%. Because if you want to go to Washington, you're not going to win a Super Bowl.
Right.
So
some of these play off of each other.
Yeah, so those two, like, it's kind of like one cancels out the other. So I put 10 and 5%. So yes, that does add up to 100%. I don't know if you're keeping track at home. But yeah, I do think that the biggest thing here is Kirk Cousins.
I'm proud of you. Let me see the picture.
See, I couldn't really finish it because you messed it.
No, that's not bad though.
Messed up my timing.
It looks like you're pretty close to actually making a decent pie chart for the first time in the history of this show.
Absolutely not. The Antonio Brown one of his helmet, and if we go back to August 9th, 2019, the day that I made that, that was really good, actually.
Yeah. So here's I'll give you my percentages before the break, and then you have to pick the Vikings in the next segment.
Oh, great.
Pick the rest of the schedule and see where we end up. I have the offense at 10%. I think the offensive design around Dalvin Cook would be okay if that didn't mean Dalvin Cook, or if it didn't mean failure in the passing game.
Well, that's what it means right now. That's how I interpret that.
But the plays that they've designed have often worked towards Stefon Diggs and Adam Thielen, and the throws haven't been made in one way or another. So I'm going to say that they would have been okay. Both receivers would have been okay with going down the field more and getting 1,000 yards on 60 catches or 65 catches as opposed to 1,000 yards on 100. Because I think that's what Kevin Stefanski and Gary Kubiak are going for. I think they would have been okay with that, but it's not working. So it's not necessarily the offense. It's that it's not working. I actually went 25% Super Bowl because this team is so close, or at least they felt they were so close going into these last 2 years, so close going into 2018, so close going into this year to repeating what they did in 2017 that I think it's on everyone's mind. I think it's the reason that a lot of guys came back and continued to play here, like Anthony Barr. It's the reason that Danielle Hunter signed early. They looked at each other and said, we can really do this. We can really win a Super Bowl. And I wouldn't preclude him from that. And I think that I've seen him after games where he played well and they lost, and he's been really upset. So I think that winning does matter to him.
No, I do too. If we were looking at it based on the DC thing, because those two play off each other, in my opinion.
Right. Yeah, that's a disaster of a franchise. They are contradictory. Yes. I understand. But number one status, I'm going to put 20%. I think that's important. But if you had the Super Bowl and you had the offense that was working for him, we've seen it before that there were no issues.
You can still get a big contract either way.
When they were winning, there were no issues in 2017 between who was the number one or anything else. I put Kirk at 25%. It might be all of it. I don't know. It's really super hard to say. I mean, some of these things play off of each other, like the offense and Kirk.
Yeah.
And then I put DC at 20 because that might be important to him. It's kind of like a lot of guesswork. All of this adds up to, you could decide that you think from the outside that one thing is more important than the other, but we really don't have anything concrete from him. And he's a guy that will just sort of decide he's not going to make things clear to us or not going to talk, and we won't know. Like he would be the guy that wouldn't do the Jalen Ramsey thing.
Yeah.
Like
I don't think the Vikings would organize a press conference like that too. That's a disaster. That was true. Down in Jacksonville.
But don't you think if he gets traded or something, we'll be like, wow, other than rumors, we didn't see that coming, or like no one.
I think it would hit you hard in the face because, like you brought up before I started charting, the Vikings would be the dumbest thing in the world for them to trade this guy away. And they are typically not a team that is very active at the trade deadline if they were seeking to do this on their own. These trade deadlines, what's October? Happy October. I just realized that. It's 29 days away or whatever. Yeah, it's October 29th.
Yeah. And you're not giving up talent off of a team that's trying to win.
No.
Usually.
And I mean, cap implications, is that what you're really looking for with that? Not with a player like Stefon Diggs,
who is
a generational talent who's really, really good. I realize I kind of just he's elite. I won't call him generational because that's probably a little bit of hyperbole on my part. He's elite. He's a huge part of your offense when your offense is schemed around him and schemed to actually, use your receivers and not make them obsolete. But I just have a really hard time believing that they would want to do this. So that's why I think the shock factor would be there, because it'd be like, oh, this player was clearly that unhappy. And you know what that does? That speaks to the rest of the temperature of this locker room. Because if he's on his way out of here, you know that there are other guys